Good afternoon, everyone. It's Ann Hine, embroidery software specialist for Janome America. And today we are doing our Easy Does It quilting with your embroidery machine. And we're not going to actually be on the machine today. I have some software things to show you, and I'm going to be showing you some samples of how to create designs and where to place them, how to create your placement on your whole quilt. So I will put the camera all the way on in just a moment. My comments are there. So if you want to post where you're from, that's great. So let me do that. I will get this taken care of. There we are. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. If you haven't seen the earlier ones, I think this is Easy Does It Quilting 4. Somewhere along the line, I think I was supposed to do one in April and it got pushed. So I think this is 4. The other 3 are here on this page over in the videos. You can search by my name. They might even come up with hashtag Easy Does It Quilting or hashtag quilting. Sometimes I forget to tag them. All that stuff to remember. And then I do move them over to our Janome Artistic Digitizer Facebook group page there, and they have their own little place there. I'm a little slow getting some things over there. Sometimes moving things from one place to another on Facebook just slows down your Facebook. So I could be trying to move 3 videos and it could take me an hour. So sometimes I'm like, oh, but they will be over there eventually. So hi, Marty, and we have Janie here. Welcome, welcome, and Diane is here. So I know we have other people on there because I can see we have more people on there. And I don't know if you noticed, I'm wearing something new today. I'm hoping that my best bud Dot comes on. She might be on here. Oh, there she is. All right, so this is for Dot. I have a new jacket sweater thing on, and I made this myself. I'm going to stand up, and I'm also going to zoom out so you can see this. If I can stand up. This is a short, I got to move my chair now. It's a short little sweater jacket. You can put buttons on here if you want, but I didn't think it needed buttons. I made it all myself. And I have other Dot fabrics, not this one. I didn't get enough of this one, but I have other Dot fabrics. So something might be coming your way at some point. I'm going to show the pattern because everybody's going to wonder. This is a Marlowe, and it's by True Bias. And it comes in a short and a long version. So the long version's not that much longer. So I may do the long version on our next ones. But this has been wonderful. I love this. It's very easy to do. It was front and a back, 2 fronts and a back, 2 sleeves, and then just your wristband, waistband, and the neckband. So I'm slowly getting into sewing clothes. I'm just having so much fun. So let me put this back up here, and I'll sit back down. So hopefully, Dot, you like this because I have some more fabric. So who doesn't have Dot fabric? Between the 2 of us, I think we have the corner market on all Dot fabrics. Anyways, yes, all done on the serger, all serged. The only thing you do by machine is you can top stitch. I haven't top stitched here yet, but you can top stitch uh, the neck, this neck seam down. Okay. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So anyways, I saw this in a shop up in Jersey called let me see, Urban Society, and they had it hanging there, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I need. That's the sweater, and it's considered like a sweater, but you can make it out of any no cover stitch. Well, I guess I could use top cover maybe for doing this on this part, but it's just a little like you can stitch in the ditch or you can stitch off to the side. So the bottom part had a band, and I did the self band on all of it. So, okay, woohoo! Enough of that. We're here for quilting. I'm sure everybody's like, stop talking clothing. All right, so this is Easy Does It Quilting, and we do have 3 other videos that we've worked on the same subject. So what I want to do is today, what we're going to go over is planning out your quilting, how to place it on your quilt, and how to create some designs. And I also have some samples to show you. So I'm going to start with a couple of samples because then as I talk about things, I think you'll understand it Thank you. Betty said I did a great job. Well, I guess I could use the cover stitch. I just have to play with that a little bit more. Anyways, so let me start with my samples so I can show you some quilt samples, and we'll cover some topics as we go. So one of the things, when you're creating, you have your quilt done and you're ready to put your quilting on there, you have to do a couple things. And one of the things you want to do is, well, you have to find your design that you want to put on there. And then you have to figure out how many, you don't really have to figure out how many repeats across and down, but sometimes that's helpful to know, because if your design is a bit wider, you might want to adjust it so it fits evenly across, or you just know you're going to have to crop. And some people just want to crop; they don't want to change their designs, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to show you how to crop using the Artistic Digitizer software. So typically, you would measure across your quilt and get a number, and you'd measure down your quilt and get a number. So if I had, my quilt was say 45 by 60, and I had a design that was 9 inches wide by 10 inches high, then I would divide the 9 into the width, and that would be, what's 9 into 45? Does anybody know what that is? And then we have the 10 into 6. So we know how many across we'd have to go. Now, even though you have that number, as you stitch across, you might find out, because the quilt will shrink up just a little bit, maybe, sometimes it doesn't, you might get to the end and you have to adjust for that last one or put a partial design over there. But pretty much it's going to be pretty close. I don't have a lot of take up on my quilts. I do start in the top left and I work to the right and then I go down. I'm not a middle person. I don't start in the middle and go one way and the other way. I start in the top left and go across. But if you had a giant quilt, you might want to start in the middle and do, half one way, so that you only have that part under your arm of your machine, and then you're going to have to flip it all around, flip your design, and go the other way. And that's one reason I don't do it that way, because I get distracted and I'll have the design upside down the wrong way. So that's just me. And I came from long arming. So for me, I usually start my left and go to my right. So I'm so used to that. I just apply it here. So, and everybody will tell you, there are different people saying you need to start in the middle because of shrinkage and all of that. I haven't had that much shrinkage in mine. I haven't noticed that. So do a sample and find out for yourself. But it is a measurement. You want to measure across your design and your quilt and down to just give you an idea of how many rows. Because if you have a design, say my design didn't divide into 45 evenly, and maybe it doesn't, so maybe I want something else, and I might either want a different design, or I might want to adjust the size of the design to fit evenly across. Same thing with going down. Maybe I don't want a partial design at the bottom, so I'll want to adjust my sizing to fit that in. And you can easily do that in our Artistic Digitizer software. It will adjust your stitches, so you're good with that part of it. Okay. All right, so let's see what else is happening here. Oh, welcome, Betty. First time joining, so welcome, welcome. All right, so we did the measuring, just your design. The other thing you want to do is print a template. And I printed 2 templates because I've worked with this design before, but because it's on my quilt. And so you would print a template. I'm going to bring it in close so you can see. Now you can print this on, there's template material, fab stuff you can get that sticks on. This is just printer paper I just used today. And when I go to use this, I will cut close to my design so that I have it. And once I get going, I will attach this to my grid, and I'll show you that in the process. I have it printed in 2 different locations. So let's go this way. There we go. So you can see how it's above the arrow to the left, and then this one is more centered. And you'll see that in the grid, and I'll tell you why I'm doing that in the grid. All right, the next thing you would do is, once you have your design ready to go, you would prep your quilt. So when you're using your machine, you do want to make sure you have, even when you send it to a long armor, your batting can be the same size as your quilt. I do like my batting a little bit bigger, but I do like my backing at least 4 inches larger on all sides, so that I can get up in the corner of my of my quilt. So you don't have to worry about, you have that extra to work with. And if you don't have extra fabric, you can always, I always save these long strips and you can just baste them onto the edges and use that. So that just works as well too. I'm going to be working with the our quilting hoop, and I know some people use our large RE46 hoop. So it is an option. You have to figure out how you're going to clamp it and hold it in there because you really can't get quilt layers in there, but there's ways to do that. So I'm going to have to explore that part of it. I'm waiting on a few things to happen before we get to that. So let me show you my samples and we'll talk about that. The other thing is you can spray baste your quilt layers together, or you can pin baste, whatever you like to do. Everybody has their own thing on that too. You can spray baste or pin baste. They do make a fusible batting. You might want to use that. There's also I think Quilters Select has a powder that you put down and then activates with heat. I haven't tried that, so I don't know how it feels, if it's soft or if there's a little, crinkly into it. And talking about crinkling, I did send a project to my long armor that I had paper pieced a little section of it because my blocks I had a little issue with like bias on there. So I did them like paper piecing to hold them nicely in there. And I forgot to remove one of the blocks and she didn't think anything of it. It's like sewn into my quilt. So, but anyways, okay, so let's go over here. I'll put on the camera so you can see my samples and I'll talk about them. Now you've seen this sample before when I was working on it. So you may see it in older videos, but I just wanted to show you a couple things here. I did curve the edge of this. So part of my design was over here. So I have cut it off. And some people would prefer maybe not to have the edges of their design to go into their binding. Some people like that. So when you're placing your design on your quilt, you have to think about what space you're going to leave on the edges so that you know whether you're going to bind over it or not bind over it. That's perfectly up to you. On these edges, sometimes you do want to bind over it because this is where it started. There's a starter edge here. And like if this was the edge of my quilt, it started right here. And that's where it started the design. So I may want that in my seam. So I would have to chop off some of this. But that's something of personal preference. And it also depends on what kind of quilt you're doing and for what reason. The other thing is I have my my little binding on here, my piping binding, and I did a little demo on that a while back. Here it is here. I'm going to pull it back here so you can see. It's actually two pieces of fabric. So you have your focus fabric is you want to cut that 1.5 inches, and this fabric you want to cut 1 3/4. Let me look at my note. Yes, 1 3/4. And then you sew it together. And then when you flip it over and put these edges together right here, these edges are, let me open that up. These edges come together. It makes that little bit of a flap, that little bit of piping. And then you can apply it just like binding to the back and flip it to the front, just like that. Okay, so it's 1.5 for your probably your main fabric, and then for your little accent, you want 1 3/4. So if you wanted to do that. So as I said, this I would use my template for this, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute. You can also do designs that are, and I haven't finished this one. This has a couple of different things. Up here, I have a stipple design that I did block, but it's kind of a stipple going across. And this design down here, let me move it up, is a block design. So when you're doing a block design, you really don't have to, you just have to measure your block to make sure you have the right size in there. And then you could just place it in each one as you go. So you don't have to measure your quilt so much apart and down because you're doing it block by block, but you would want to measure the block. And this one has a block and then some strips here. I might want to get really fancy and do a little block in here and then do something that maybe goes around the corner there. Okay, so that's a little bit up to you. But I wanted to show you, this is what I do. I have my quilt here ready to go. So I have the orange is my backing fabric, and on this side I didn't have enough, so I added this little piece here, a strip that I have. So I have plenty of room here to go off my quilt if needed. Let me see what else is under here. I think I have my hoop under there. Oh, I do. So let me go this way. I have one more thing. And we're going to talk about doing some things like this. This is ambiance quilting. So I don't know if I did a lesson on that. I'll have to do a lesson on ambiance quilting. I'm going to show you a little bit of that today. So you can fill in around embroideries, and you can create a shape and then, fill in with stippling around that. And I did a very tight stippling, so this looks like trapunto on there. You can see it more on the back. Okay, I haven't finished this one yet. I need to figure out what I want to do for my binding. And then this one is, you can't even see it on the other side, but I'm going to show it on this side. This is a design I drew in the software. So I'm going to show you how to create your own in the software. And it's an edge to edge, and then I was stitching it across. And you can't even see it here because it just blends in. That's why I'm showing you the back side of it. Sometimes that's the hard thing. I want to make a good demo piece, but I also want to make a piece that might be usable. So I don't want to use like neon thread on that. So let me pull a couple things up. All right, and I talked about hoops, right? Let me make sure if there's a question, make sure you post it over there. I'll try to answer it as I go. There might be, I think Tracy's watching. We had Amy on there. They might be able to answer as well. So this is our quilting hoop, and it comes with those large magnets that you would put around here, and they're great because you lay your quilt over this, and then you use this grid to push your quilt in. And I will just show you with my fake quilt here. And here we go. Let's just say, all right, so I laid my layers over. If I was doing another portion, when I get in here, I can do this kind of thing. This would push down in there, and it would push my quilt in, and then I would just put my magnets all along here to hold in my quilt. And then I would take this out. If you had, sometimes you can leave this in for just a moment so you know that your center needle is right here, and use your jog to get it right in the center, then remove this. Some people will put their template on their grid. Some people will place their template on their fabric. Just depends on how you want to go. All right, now I'm going to go back to the completed quilt because I have a couple things there. Let me find it. So I threw it on the floor. Okay. Okay, so why did I print templates? This is an edge-to-edge design. It starts here, ends over here. Okay. And I have it done with its center in my hoop. And then I also have it so that there's the center of my hoop, but I have it up here. Because when I was starting this quilt, when I laid this here, if I laid it in the center, I'd have to have a lot of fabric out here. That's why you want to make sure you have your 4 inches around here. So if you didn't, some designs you can move up to the center, some of them you can't. So I moved it to the center to show you guys if you wanted to put your piece up there, and then you would align this on here. And I have a shadow, I'm sorry. Don't know why that's because I added a light up on top. I moved my lights around this weekend, and I plugged some newer ones in. So let's see if is it better if I'm off to the side. I just realized that shadow is really bad. So hopefully you can see the design. So when I talked about quilt planning, what does that mean? How does that apply to your quilt, and what do you do? So you have your quilt and you're ready to quilt it. And I'm going to pull up one that's not have any quilting on a section of it so you can see. We'll turn this around to a bottom corner. There we go. Well, I don't really have, oh, here we go. I have a good corner here. Kind of a good corner. All right, so here's my quilt. We're going to pretend it cuts off over here somewhere. here's my quilt, and I'm going to do an edge to edge. So what I would do is I would first take my template and I would either cut it smaller and attach it to my grid or lay it on here just to see how it would fit, because I want to see where it's going to go. So what I would do is and you can make, I'm just going to cut this really big. Usually I cut really close, or maybe a 1/4 inch away, because that helps with the view. So I take my piece. The arrow means that's the top of my hoop. I've laid my hoop down with a connector on my left side because I'm on the CM17. If you were using any of our other machines with, except for the 500, 550E, 400, those have the connector on the left. Our other machines have the connector up over here, so you would make sure that your connector was on your right-hand side. That way you know when you put this down with the arrow, it's going to point in the right direction. So I would say if I wanted to start this on my quilt, I would figure out how far away from the edge, how far from this edge, and I would lay that in there. And I'd say, okay, that's where I want it to go. And I would attach it to my quilt with probably a little tape, or I would put it on my, of course, my pins are not where they should be. There we go. I would put it on my grid or use that template. The template stuff is nice. Template Magic. It's sticky, so you just have to stick it down. I'm just going to pin this just generally. Now, yesterday, Celine gave a nice thing on placing embroideries. Same thing. It's the same way here. This is, you're placing an embroidery. That's all you're doing. You're just placing an embroidery. It's when you get to the next one is a little bit more. So I would take my grid. Where did I put my grid? Let's see, it moved somewhere. It's disappeared. Oh, there, here. All right. Your grid has letters up here. Can you see those letters? You want to be able to read those letters, and it does have 2 little finger holes down here. So you know you're going to put it in the right way. So that's where I want it, but this is the center of my grid. So I have to hold my quilt and move it back like this. And I did a bit of this in our first 2 videos as well. So this is where the grid's going to fit in my hoop. I need to adjust where this arrow is now so that it's centered on my grid. There we go. Let me get it in there. There we go. And so you fiddle with that a little bit. When you have it where you want it, that's when you put your magnets down. So this would be the start of, I'm going to move it up so you can see. This would be the start of your quilt. You do your first one. Now, before I did this first one, while it's laying here, if this is where I want it, I would mark these sides here. And then I would draw a line completely across my quilt, that same measurement down, so that I know as I'm setting the next ones that I'm keeping them horizontally straight. So you don't want to drift down. And you can, if you don't want to make lines, I didn't make lines for a long time. I'm an eyeballer. And I figure with eyeballing with this and using the lines on my grid, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. So you can do it that way as well. But if you want a line, if you want to be sure you're going across, lay this where you want it, mark where that is, and then just draw a chalk line across so that you have that measurement. Then you're going to stitch your first one. When it's done, you'll slide everything over. You'll place your template so that it matches on the line again, and that this is at the end of that. And then you hoop everything again, slide it over. And this is where I put it on my grid at this point because it's easier to keep it on the grid. And then it would be stuck here. And I would just go across. Now going down one, once I get my first row done, that's when I figure out row 2. So if this was here, these designs snug up to each other. So this part's going to fit into here. So I would take, say that one was stitched, I would take my template and lay it here and see how it looked like, oh yeah, that's where I want it. And then I would mark my line and I would draw a line across. At that point, you can measure from this line to that line, and you know how far apart each of those are going to be all the way down. Okay. All right, so let me move on from that for just a moment. Does everybody understand that part? I want to see if I have any questions in case I don't miss anything. I think we're good. All right, so that's pretty much how I would put my quilt on. That's my quilt planning. Let me see if we're doing the template marks. And then when I went to my machine, at my machine, I would turn off the auto cut, and I would also turn on one stitch stop so that I have one stitch stop on there. And one stitch stop, what it does, these are in your set mode. It goes to the first position and it will take one stitch so you can pull up your bobbin thread. Or if you don't want to turn on one stitch, you need to know on the front of your machine how you move ahead one stitch. And so you can arrow to the first stitch, and then you can use needle up, needle down, and pull up that bobbin thread. So everything's at the top. When it gets done, because you turned off your cutter, what you can do is you can move your quilt a little bit, unhook it, move it a little bit, and then do your needle up, needle down, and pull up the thread that's right at the end so that you have the threads on the top. That way you can do your knotting later and then sink it into your fabric without those knots on the back. The one stitch stop, it does make a little cut on the back, which isn't bad, but sometimes, if you don't want that, you can always turn that off and do it a different way. I do suggest you use your standard case, which is the 10-gram case, which some machines it's going to be your red one. I'm going to put my camera back on here if I can figure out where my mouse went to. Here we go. So if you want to use your your regular case, whatever is your regular case would be 10 gram, not your high tension, your 20, because for quilting, you want a more even, for embroidery, you want that to come to the back. You don't want to see anything, but for quilting, you want even front and back. You can even try the blue dot bobbin case for your machine. That's a lower tension at 8 grams, so it might give you the tension that you need. And you can adjust your upper tension to make that work better for you. I suggest on your first few quilts that you always use same thread, top and bobbin. Make a busy back fabric so you don't have to worry about seeing that. And then as you go along, start sampling with stitching a solid on the back, or maybe a different color on the fabric, different thread on the back to a thread on the top. Because that, even with long arms, you can still get a little peeky poo right where you don't want it, and across that white fabric, you'll have that one red little loop come up. You're like, why is that there? So I always find it better, put a matching thread, top and bobbin, or something, if you don't want it that jarring on the back, something a little bit less than what's going to be on the top. So, it doesn't really, you don't want it to pop up and show. So there's things there. So that edge, I think that came from OESD. Francis, I think that's where it came from. I don't remember. There's actually 2 in there, and I'm pretty sure it was OESD. That's usually where I go to on that one. So let me see. I'm going to go to the software now and show you a couple things in the software, and we'll see what our timing is. We're doing pretty good on our timing. Let me get my software up. We'll go here and then open this. There we are. And I got to close a couple things that are hanging out over here. There we go. All right, so let's go in, and I have a USB stick in right now. Let me see where it went. Oh, all right, it's not showing up because it's over in the wrong spot. Let me put it in the right little thing. I have a multi-holder. Let's see, put that in there. All right, so now I'm going to say yes because I want to see those designs. All right, so in here, so these are the 2 designs. This is the one I was showing you here. Let's open that. And you can see that, we'll go in real close. You can see it starts here and ends there. And I have my software set to open the 46 hoop, but you can have yours anywhere you want. And I would change it to the quilting hoop. So if you put it on that line, you can see it, the line starts. That's important when you're creating your own. You want to start and stop on the same line going across, The other design, let's go look at that one. This could be an edge design, or you could turn it, if I rotate that a little bit up here, hang on a second. I hope I just didn't stop our video with my wild changing. Oh, hi, Danielle. All right, let's go up here and we'll rotate that. So this one, I think I'd have to rotate maybe this way because that B right there. But again, let's go in close, take that away. There we are. So the start and stop are on, we'll move it down so you can see they're on the same plane. There we go, going across. So you could use this one as well. Now, what I was talking about, if you had a design, this design is, it's like almost 5 inches high, and it is about 7¼ width. So when I divided that into my quilt, if I wanted something, I can adjust it here, with the percentages. I would hit proportional, and maybe I need it to just be a little bit bigger. So maybe 110 up here. And when it does that, it does change your stitch count. So it doesn't just stretch it out. So you have that as well. And if you have to, sometimes you have to get it to turn. I think this one will stitch. Let me see. This one should, yep, it's starting on the left and will stitch to the right. So there we go. It would stitch like that. So you have the options of making your designs a little bit bigger in your software and changing your stitch count as well. So let me show you something else too that I was working on. All right. So with that larger design, one of the things I wanted, so I can show you this, these pink lines would be the line I would draw on my quilt. Okay, and these designs are connecting right here like that. Now when I go to place my second design, I can decide how close this is. Maybe this is too far away for me. If I wanted it closer, I'm just going to bring it in closer like that. Maybe I want it that way, and it's off the line. It's going to overlap that line just a little bit. So I'm bring it down. So if this is how I had it, there we go. It would overlap right here, but it would be a little bit closer. That's up to you. That's up to you what you want to do. Same thing when you start that second row. When I lay this template down that's right here, and I see where it's sitting in this area, and I think, oh, I need it to, well, that's going to put the whole row up. That's fine. It needs to be closer like that maybe, or down a little bit. That's when I will measure from the start of this one to the start of that one. And then I can measure down from there that same amount. So I don't have to, I would just generally have a line. Now, sometimes you put your lines in, and because the way things stitch, you're not starting and stopping on the line, but it's giving you a visual to keep your design straight as you go. And that's where you can use your grid on there to keep your line straight as you go. Now, sometimes I just, fly by the seat of my pants. I bring up my template. I pop it down there. I stitch. Oh, that's right. I like it. I stitch it. I move it over, stitch the next one, and I just eyeball my whole quilt because I have a busy quilt, and no one's going to see if there's a little bit of a, this is bigger or less there. But what happens is you might get to a part in your quilt where the row ends up being this far, and you're like, oh, I didn't see it, and it's already stitched in there. So the lines are good. Make sure you use the proper marker for that. Test it out. Over the 2 weekends ago, I had an old project that I pulled out that I wanted to do some cross hatching on, and I used a yellow, and it's a chalk one, and I cannot get it out of my fabric. Where I pressed it, I didn't press it yet. I didn't press this. When I put it in on two parts of it, I went over the line because I couldn't see the line, and those parts are not coming out. So I'm trying I'm not going to press it because I don't want to set anything, but I've been trying different ways to remove that. So do a test on all of those markers that you have. I typically like to use a white chalk, or some people use tailor's chalk, or even thin slivers of soap. That works really well as well. That's I think an old school thing. Amy knows about that for sure. All right. Now, when you get to the bottom of your quilt, if you have, say this pink line here ends up being the bottom of my quilt, and I'm going to move this up a little bit further, but I can't get a whole repeat in there. I have two options. One, I can, let it stitch, and then I could stop. I can just let it overstitch if I have fabric there, or I can stop it here, and then I can, jog ahead, not jog, stitch, move my stitches ahead to that point, and then, head to that point, whatever, and do it like that. Or I could use my knife feature, and I could clip that design. And I'm going to make it a little bit more up just so I don't want to deal with that. There. So if I was going to cut it right there, I would go over here to my digitize outline shape, and I'm going to click there and a click here, right click end shape. And then I'm going to select my design, and it's selecting the whole thing. So let me do this first. Let me select it and ungroup this. So I only have one. I'm going to select my line and select my piece, right click, there's the knife, and then I'm going to remove my guideline and delete. So you can see there's a little stop right here. And I would make that stop go off my quilt a little bit. And I would definitely, on any of my edges of my quilt, I would either baste it or make sure I've spray basted it so it stays down, because this, when it comes over here and starts up, this is where it's going to catch your quilt and cause an issue. So make sure, and don't be putting your fingers down there. We all do it, but that's the time you end up with the needle in your finger. And I'm going to knock on wood, I have not had that happen. I try not to put my fingers in the hoop at all. But you want to make sure that these edges are actually off your quilt, so they go in your seam allowance. And then it would just stitch there, it would jump over, stitch here, jump over, like that. So you would have this part down here removed. Let me click it and see if I can remove it. Well, why are we not removing? Let's see. Oh, that's why, because my guidelines are still on. Let's delete that one. Got to turn off your tool. There we go, and I could delete that. So I would have that nice cropped design, and I have to take this piece off. Oh, it cropped the next one, which doesn't really matter. Or maybe it's part of this one. The other thing to remember is to try to make sure you have your start and stop so you know where those are, so you can place it better. Okay, so you have that. You could take this out of here at this point and print a template that's cropped, so you have that to work with as well. Has anybody used the print feature? Let me show you how that works. I don't have mine set up to the printer, but what you're going to do is select your piece, come up here to print. Oh, it's not in the hoop. Let me just copy it and put it on its own page. Okay. Yeah, I don't want the whole thing. I just want this one. So I'm going to copy it and go to a new page and put it here and paste it. And then come up here, it's center to hoop, and zoom all to get it back to the center. I want to be in my quilting hoop, so I'm going to go back to my icons and pick my quilting hoop right here, and then turn the hoop off. Come up here to print. When it comes up like this, I just want the design, so it'll go to one page usually. And then I do want center lines because I want that crosshair. Now it has my crosshair. Mine is set for save as PDF or JPEG because I don't have this hooked up to my printer. If I did, my printer would show there. So I could send it directly to my printer, and that's how I would have my template. Now, if you're sending to your printer and you have that template magic or those sheets that can go in your printer, put those in, it'll print right on there. Another way to make a template is to hoop stabilizer, stitch your design. In the machine, there is a calibration that will give you the center arrow, and you can stitch that in there as well. So if you don't have ability to print, there's always ways to get a nice, what do you call it? A nice template for you to use. All right, so let me see how we're doing here. I think we're doing good. All right, let me see if there's any. Oh, so we showed you that. And if you wanted to create your own, remember I said you want to start and stop here. And sometimes I'm really good at drawing, and I'm just going to use this hoop. Use your digitized outline shape. And there's different ones of the digitized, so I have it set with the context. And I'm just going to start here, and I can go around like this. Now I can edit my piece when I get done. If I don't like how it is, now sometimes I like to do this thing, I call it like a little, I think it's a little flower. Well, it's not, well, there we go. You can bring in a backdrop and use that as well. Let's do one loop-de-loo here, and then we'll come up here like that. End shape. There we go. There we go. So let's select that. Let me copy it or duplicate it and see how that would look when you put it over there. So typically I like to look at what my repeat's going to look like, because I might want something different here. Plus, when I select this, let's select both of these, and I make a second row. There we go, and shift. When I make a second row, let's duplicate it. And that pops into here. See, I'm going to have to leave it way down here. So there'll be, some spaces in there, and sometimes that's fine. You can use your array tool also to set this up to see how your layout's going to look. I love using my software to make a layout because I can see, I'm visual, and then I can see what my whole quilt looks like. I think that comes from when I was using a long arm and a long arm software, and you can create your whole quilt layout and see your design on the whole quilt, how it would look in that, 45 by 60, how it would look. So it's good to do that. So that's how you could create your own. And then, this would be the one you'd save. And of course, I always like to save first as my draw file, and then I go back and save as a Jeff file or whatever embroidery file that I'm going to use. What was the other one I was going to show you? I showed you those two. Oh, when you use the ambiance quilting, I do have some, I've been playing around with these. I'm going to show you let's go to this one. This is currently, I think I'm going to stitch it. I don't know. So I'm doing these here where I put these flower shapes down on here. These are actually in the software. And then I put the ambiance quilting around them and remove the shapes, so that this is going to be more like a trapunto sticking out there. So I have a real tiny one there. This one is not so tiny. And then I have another tiny, tiny one with this rose. And this one I was leaving in the stitching here to see, same with the other one, I left the stitching in just to see how that is on there. And these came from the software. I'll show you here. I have one of them here. So if I took this one and I'm going to copy it and go to a new page, if I wanted to use my ambiance quilting, what I could do is have my shape there, select it, come up here to convert, ambiance quilting. This is how big my quilting, how far around I want it. So I want a 5-inch. Maybe I want this to be 6 inches around. You can decide. It can be a rectangle as well. It does not have to be a square. Well, let's see if I can type today. Probably not. One more here. So I'm going to make it a 6-inch square. This is the size of my design, and I'm going to use the stipple. This is very dense, so if you want it really dense, you can leave it like that, or you can put it, maybe you want it at 0.20 millimeter. No, I think that 0.20 is good. And then this is the offset. This is how far away the stipple will be from my design. And I'm going to stick okay. Now, because I picked a larger one, it didn't go in here. With a skinnier one, it will. On this one here, if I want an outline, I can add an outline, and then I can delete the inside part. Let's make that outline a running stitch. Well, I'm going to have to, oh, there it is. Let me take this. Let me get rid of this one. I think that might not work. It may, oh, there it is. So this would look more like trapunto, and then my stipple would be around it. If I needed to adjust my stipple, I would come in here, edit nodes. It's going to edit the shape of the stipple where it is, not the stipple itself. All right. So let me go back to the camera. It's fun to play with the with ambiance quilting. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. So if you just need to make some stipple areas, you can do that. Within the software, there are some what are called AccuFill quilting designs. They're just stipple blocks that you can put in, and they're under the samples. I'm not sure. Let's see if I have them here. Here we go. So these are the ones that come in the software. They're pre-made, so you can just pick them out like that. You can adjust them as well, but there's sample ones. And these, when you duplicate them and drag them down, they are ones that link up like that. So they kind of come together. See how that works? Let me bring that back to the center. There we go. So you can look like you stippled your quilt very easily. So you can do a whole stipple all over your quilt. You don't have to create it yourself. All right, I'm going to bring the camera back up and see where we're at as far as questions. Everybody's been very quiet. So if there's any questions, just let me go back through and make sure. I don't think I didn't have any. Okay. All right, then. All right, everybody, I'm going to let you go. Well, maybe I should wait just a second if there's any, we are still going, right? Yeah, okay. Oh, Francis, you learned a lot. Oh, very good. Well, hopefully you did. I kind of went back and repeated some of the stuff I did before because I think it's important to, to do more of that, to cover something we covered before, just so there's new people in so they can sort of understand where we're coming from. But I'll probably do maybe one more or two more of these segments. We'll see how things go. I'm always on Thursday. You can find me same place, same time on Thursdays. And then I'm sometimes on Fridays. I'm over on the Continental Club page as well. So I'm going to let everybody go. Have a great day and a nice rest of the week. Hopefully you'll pop in tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm working with lettering and turning lettering into applique letters. So that should be kind of fun. Not real hard to do, but just kind of fun. All right, everyone, have a great day. We'll see you again. Thanks for joining me today.